Welcome to The Crossing. My name's Adam. I oversee all the Next Generation ministries here at The Crossing. Mark, our senior minister, and a couple guys from our leadership team, Steve and Rich, are actually in Canada today at The Crossing North, where they've been leading a leadership time with their church. And Mark's preaching this morning, so I think they have one more session tonight. They've been having a great time and effectiveness for the kingdom, and I know they would love if you would continue to pray for them while they're there, and they come back sometime at the beginning of this week. It's been a great time. So I'm on the mound today, and I'm excited to be back. If you're new with us this last month, I may be a new face to you. I've been on sabbatical this past month, so I have been free from ministry responsibilities, which I want to say thank you to you for allowing me to be away like that, to just spend some time with the Lord and with my family. And a special thank you to our next-gen ministers who have just kind of taken over back there, and I'm pretty sure I'm unnecessary here at this point because they've been crushing it back there, and so thankful for all of them. I'll be honest, it's really hard to be away from family for like a whole month, so I have been sneaking in these last couple weeks to come to church here just because I don't like being away. But my time with the Lord has been great. My prayer going into sabbatical was really, Lord, would you just draw me close? And he did that. He strengthened and deepened my faith and just really energized me and confirmed my convictions and squashed some of my fears and my doubts and helped me understand some things I need to work on just so I can be the guy he wants me to be. And it's been a really great month. And all of that happened because I spent a month in one passage of Scripture. One chapter of the Bible, potentially a familiar passage of Scripture for some of you, and it all starts with one astonishing truth that I'm confident that if you were to grab hold of this one truth by faith in your life, it'll change your life. And so we're just going to walk through this passage of Scripture. It's 6 verses. I think you'll probably recognize it. And here's this life-changing truth, and it simply says, "When the Lord's my shepherd, I lack nothing." I lack nothing. I don't need anything. I don't want anything. I've got everything I need. I lack nothing. Many of you would recognize that verse probably as the first verse in Psalm chapter 23. Psalm 23 is a chapter that a great God follower in the Old Testament named David wrote. David was a shepherd, and then he became king of Israel. He was a warrior, a soldier, and certainly not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But God even said about David that he is a man after my own heart. That's how God described him. And so we can learn a lot from David as being a shepherd. Now, most scholars think that David wrote this chapter as king, if not even further on in life, but no doubt remembering back to when he was a shepherd tending his father's flock. And he says with this full faith, full assurance, total conviction, "The Lord, he is my shepherd, and I lack nothing." And he remembered what it is to be a shepherd. So it's kind of like my relationship with God is like the sheep with the shepherd. And he knows that a shepherd is a leader and a protector and a provider and a caretaker and a friend. And David declares, the Lord's my shepherd. I don't want another shepherd. I don't need another shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I'm completely satisfied with just having God as my shepherd. He takes care of my every need. He's better than anything else. I lack nothing. Doesn't so much of our misery and struggle in life come because we think or feel that we need or want more or better or newer, or I just need something else? David said, I don't want anything. I don't need anything. Now, lacking nothing doesn't mean that I lack nothing doesn't mean that I'll just have this instant financial prosperity necessarily. It doesn't mean that there'll be no sickness or no loss or no death. I lack nothing doesn't mean that it's just an instant healing from aches and pains and unhappiness. Really, it's a faith-filled approach to life that simply says, my shepherd has never failed me. My shepherd always keeps his promises, and if things just keep going the way they've always gone, I still lack nothing. See, the longer you walk with God, the more he decreases our desires for anything other than him. I'm most satisfied when I'm walking closely with the Lord. I feel most cared for when I'm walking closely with the Lord. I am in the expert care of Jesus. I'm completely content with his management of my life. He's enough, past, present, and future. I lack nothing. Psalm chapter 23, verse 1. I kind of adopted it as my life verse for this season of life that I'm in. It's such a statement of faith. And I don't want to just skip over the next 5 verses, the rest of the psalm. The next 5 verses, David goes to kind of underscore the effects of having the Lord be my shepherd. And I love how he puts all the emphasis on the Lord, because you see, if the focus of Christianity, the focus of our faith, of our church, of our lives is anything but Jesus Christ, we've missed the boat. And we will lack a whole lot. But when the Lord is our shepherd, we lack nothing. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Verse 2 says, He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. Too often we have this perspective of just, hey, just press on. Just forge ahead. If you're familiar with Dory, just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. And let's be honest, sometimes that is the prescription. Sometimes you just need to keep going. You got to push through. But hear me, not always. That's not always what needs to happen. And thankfully, we have a God that when we don't understand that, in His great love for us, He will make us lie down in green pastures. It's an interesting way to say that, to think that God's going to make us lie down. I don't know if spend so much time on what He's doing, but where we're doing it. This isn't like God's going to just like press you down with His thumb and say, you're going to stay here and you're going to listen and you're going to rest and rawr. Like, you don't do that to your own kids all the time. I mean, let's be honest. I just did that yesterday, I think. But that's not what God's doing. The bigger picture is God's making us lie down in green pastures. That the words in the original Hebrew actually mean it's the young, rich, most nutrient-rich grass. That it's the best grass has to offer. And that's where God's lying us down. If you're a shepherd and there's a time when your sheep are grazing in one pasture and it gets dried out or burned up or completely eaten and we have to move the sheep to another pasture, God makes us lie down in these green pastures that are so good and rich and nourishing, we'll never have to go to another pasture. Really, God knows that we need time with Him. And He wants that so much, and he loves us so much that sometimes He'll just make us lie down. He will just put the kibosh on our own busy agendas and make us lie down and draw close in intimate rest so that He can lead us beside quiet waters. Quiet waters are much deeper and much slower moving and much gentler than the loud rushing waters that we're used to in this life. And so the Lord leads us here where we're able to be still and know that He's God. Where we're able to listen to our shepherd's voice and be able to hear Him without distraction. Where we can just sit and think and reflect and dream and confess and just be with God while He refreshes our soul. You ever feel like you just need your soul to be refreshed? I don't think I even know what that means, but it sounds amazing. Like we need that. He restores the purity and the peace and the joy that oftentimes our flesh and this world tears away from us. The Lord does it. Because only He can do it. He created your inmost being, and so the Lord alone can bring refreshment to your soul. And when we're exhausted and when we're weary and when we're burdened and when we're heavy laden, He refreshes my soul. And I want you to understand, this isn't just like this one-time singular moment of zen or something like, whoa, this is cool. This is what life looks like with Jesus as my shepherd. He's the one who is leading. He's making us lie down. He's refreshing our soul. And then verse 3 continues, He guides me along the right paths for His name's sake. I love this. He guides me along the right path. Life knocks at our front door every morning with offers of so many different directions we could possibly go that we couldn't ever pursue all of them, right? There's so many different paths to take. Some of the paths are obviously wrong and will lead to bad stuff. Some of the paths they look right, but they're still wrong. And that's why Solomon in his wisdom in Proverbs 14, I think it's around verse 12, where he says, there's a way, there's a path that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. And then there's these paths that are right for a while. There's so many paths. And so the Lord, our shepherd, guides us along right paths every time. The paths he leads us down will always be right, will always lead to life, will always lead to blessing. They might not be the paths that you and I would prefer. They most likely will be along some rocky and rough terrain. They may even look like a giant detour in the plan you have for your life. But here's what we can trust, is that when the Lord is our shepherd and we follow his lead, he will lead us along the right paths every time. And when we follow him, he and his name are magnified upon the earth for his name's sake. So many paths though, right? There's so many paths to take, and sometimes those paths can look really scary. Whether it's a right path or a wrong path, sometimes the path looks really scary. It seems as though the walls are kind of caving in and there's nowhere else to turn. There's no way out. Have you ever experienced that feeling in your life? David sure did. David experienced that as a shepherd, where he's leading his sheep in these places up in the mountains where the walls are so tall and so narrow that there's literally no light. In the middle of the day, it seems like it's nighttime. They call it the valley of the shadow of death. He also experienced that as a man because, well, he's a man, he's a person, and so he's got his own issues and his own struggles and his own dark valleys. And so, but he writes faithfully in verse 4, even though I walk through the darkest valley, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you may have heard it that way, right? I will fear no evil, for you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Even if you've never been to church before, you've probably heard this verse. I just can't get past the first two words. Even though, not if you find yourself in a dark valley. Not if you get caught up in some stuff and get caught in the dark. No, even though I walk through the darkest valley, it's going to happen. Dark valleys, low points, ends of ropes, difficult seasons, the shadow of death, these places are unavoidable. Some are the cause of our own choices. Our own decisions have caused these things to happen. Some of them are thrown at us by our enemy, the devil. Some of these dark valleys come from God himself. Some are completely out of our control, but here's what I know. None of them are surprises to the Lord. Never have you been in a place, in a struggle, in a dark valley in your life where Jesus goes, didn't see that one coming. It's never happened. It's never happened. In fact, Jesus flat out warns us in John chapter 16. He says, in this world, you're going to have trouble. In 2 Corinthians, Paul talks about our present sufferings because that's real stuff. James in chapter 1 talks about persevering through trials of many kinds. I don't have to sell you on this. There's a lot of dark valleys that abound around us, and none of us are immune. The difference is our company. The difference is who we're with, or rather, who's with us. David knows that his shepherd leads from the front. A shepherd always leads his sheep from the front, which means that through every dark valley, the first person to get there is the shepherd. The first person to see what's ahead, what's around the corner, what's on the other side is the shepherd. And so there's no valley that you have ever been through, that David's ever been to, that God didn't know what was going on and say, it's okay, we're going to come this way. Because if it's not okay, he's a shepherd. He would turn around and go the other way. And so David, with confidence, knows that the Lord is leading, is in the, I will fear no evil. And we can say that too. When the Lord's our shepherd, I'll fear no evil. I'm not going to be afraid or overwhelmed. I'm not going to be paralyzed. I'm not going to be doubtful. I'm not going to turn back because I know I'm not alone. My shepherd has led from the front. He's already been to the valley. He knows what's ahead. And now, get this, he's leading from the front. And now, where is he? Now you're with me. Now he's walking through this darkest valley with us. I can trust him. He never fails. I don't have to worry. I don't even have to worry about what's on the other side of the valley because my shepherd knows. And he says it's okay. I don't have to worry about my future. I don't have to worry about my reputation. I don't have to worry whether or not my needs are going to be met, my bills are going to be paid. I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to be alone because you, Lord, are with me. And like any good shepherd, he has his rod and his staff, and they comfort me. These are tools for guiding us, right? When we stray off the path a little bit, guiding and correcting and bringing us back to the right path. These are also tools for warding off would-be attackers as a sheep for keeping away the wolves and the bears. As people, there's those things that could take us down. Guys, the shepherd's got it covered. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to worry. Fear? No. Get this. With the Lord as your shepherd in the darkest valleys of your life, comfort. Somebody say, that doesn't make any sense at all. What? Yeah. That's the deal when the Lord is the shepherd. And then David goes on in verse 5, he says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Let me ask you this, have you gathered up any enemies in your lifetime? This is really interesting. The correct answer to that question is, I hope so. Wait, what? Yeah, I hope I have some enemies out there. Don't get me wrong, it's not, we don't enjoy having enemies, but it's a little bit sad, if I'm honest, and even maybe a little bit arrogant to think that I can walk through this whole life and not have any enemies. Jesus couldn't even do that. Jesus walked through this life and certainly created his fair share of enemies. It should be impossible as a follower of Christ, a Christian, to stand up for what's right, to approach every day with wholehearted conviction and not ruffle some feathers along the way. In fact, Jesus goes so far to say, woe to you when all people speak well of you. Wait, I thought I wanted everybody to speak well of me. Oh, apparently not. Jesus says, woe to you if that's true. And he's saying that to people, to Pharisees who were willing to do anything and say anything so that people would like them. You see, when Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount said, blessed are the peacemakers, what he didn't say was, blessed are the compromisers. Compromising means you set aside what you know to be right and true so that you can fit in, so that you can be accepted, so that you can have friends and be a part of the group. And man, especially for our next generation, this is really hard to deal with. These people are hard to deal with. These situations are hard to deal with. And sometimes they cause us to doubt ourselves, these enemies. And I'm not talking about the kids you smack on the head and run away, or you don't ask for forgiveness, you don't apologize to, or you pick on her. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people who resist you and oppose you because you're doing the right thing. Because you're taking a stand for what's right and what's good and what's true. We're not setting aside our beliefs because it's easier. And so it's really hard, and sometimes they cause us to doubt ourselves, because when enough people send you the wrong message about who you are, you can easily become confused about exactly that, about who you are. But what matters most is not what your enemies think about you, but the one message that matters most of all is what God thinks about you, and David knows this. And so he paints this incredible statement, this incredible picture of his identity. What he knows his identity to be in with the Lord as his shepherd in verse 5, as if God himself walks into a room where David's sitting and all of his enemies are around him, and the enemies are like, yes, it's payback time. David's about to get his for all his stuff, and God's going to just reap his vengeance on David, and he's going to do it right in front of us so we can watch it and we can celebrate it. And David says, Lord, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Rather than pile on accusations and convictions, God made his approval and encouragement known to David, preparing a table and serving David a meal in front of his enemies. And the point is, your enemies may be screaming about who they say you are, but the only thing is that matters is the fact that your shepherd is the only one who knows who you really are. And so you listen to him. You believe him. You take your seat at the table with him. And David continues, a table in the presence of my enemies, then you anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. After I've been through the darkest and most difficult valleys with you, after you've prepared a table for me in the presence of my enemies, you anoint my head with oil. That's really two different pictures. One is of a shepherd who's caring for a sheep at the end of the day, gathering them up and checking them over to make sure if they've got scrapes and cuts and wounds that he'll anoint them with oil. He'll rub the oil soothingly into the wounds for healing. It's also the picture of if you're hosting some special guests at your home and they've taken a long dusty journey to get to your house, that after dinner you would anoint them with oil for refreshing, soothing and sweet smelling oil for refreshment. And David's really describing how abundantly the Lord provides for him. He's saying in essence, hey, I'm well fed, I'm safe, I'm with God, I've been refreshed and renewed with some comforting anointment and all that, and my cup overflows. What a picture of how God gives us everything we need and more. Not only does he place before us his endless resources, he also makes sure that when we do drink from the cup, when we do depend on and use the things that he provides for us, he's continuously supplying them. It never runs out. If you're relying on your spouse or on a child or a parent or a friend or a coach or anyone else to fill your cup as you're pouring out into other people, it's not going to work. You'll be bone dry by the end of the day. Because all these people you're expecting to pour back into you, number one, won't. Number two, they have a lack of resources. God, on the other hand, has an endless supply of resources, and he's continually supplying them. It never runs out. And so when life challenges your resources or tests your faith, maybe you're like me and you tend to wonder, how much do I have left? How much do I have left in the tank? What's available? The truth is we look around and our answer is, I've got more than enough. My cup overflows. Paul tells us in Ephesians 1 that, but in the person of Christ, God has given us every spiritual blessing that's available. It's not like when we get to heaven, we're going to get more and new. We've got it all right now in Christ. Peter tells us that we have been given everything we need pertaining to life and godliness. We don't need anything else. We lack nothing with Jesus as our shepherd. I don't have to wonder or worry about having enough because God keeps my cup to overflowing. And the Lord longs to have that comforting and providing relationship with you each day. Just like the shepherd carefully checks his flock to tend their wounds and their scrapes, God pours out his oil of healing and blessing as you come to him. And that's what our shepherd does. He fills our cup with joy as he tends to our heartaches and our pain. And so David concludes this psalm really the only way he can with another faith-filled declaration. Because the Lord is my shepherd, verse 6 says, surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is a promise for every child of God. Every person who has turned from their sin and embraced Jesus by faith has the promise of God's relentless goodness and his love pursuing you. God's goodness, it's his favor, it's his blessing, it's his bounty, and his love, his mercy, his loving kindness, his steadfast, it's an eternal thing. His love is persistent, it's stubborn, this love that God has for his children. It just won't quit. He won't turn his back. He won't give up. He's relentless in his pursuit of you. No matter what choices you make or where you go, he will come after you. And surely his goodness and his love will follow you all the days of your life, which literally means that the best days you have are ahead. Right? Forever. David's last word is a powerful one. I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It's not going to be a temporary visit. It's forever. I'm moving in to my Father's house. It's been the plan all along. It's where we're designed to spend eternity. Heaven was created for God's children, and we were created for it forever. I'm going home. You see, life on earth here is very short. The deadline's coming fast. Eternity is racing upon us. The clock's going to run out, and at some point, time will no longer exist. And like John Newton's old hymn, Amazing Grace, says so beautifully, when we've been there 10,000 years, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun on day one. Isn't that cool? There's no better end to have on your mind than that, and that's what it's like with the Lord as your shepherd. That's where the Lord took me this past month. I needed to spend an entire month on 6 verses in Psalm 23. And I wish I had some kind of cool, creative way to wrap this, put a bow on it, send you out like this practical application, and I don't. I don't really need it. I've got Psalm 23. Can't really dress that up any better. In fact, if I were to encourage you to do one thing this week, it would be to read this psalm every day, slowly, deliberately, and out loud. Because this is the reality of who you are. This is the truth of who you are when the Lord is your shepherd. And I would encourage you just to let this truth wash over you and mold you and send you out for the day. Not the other things around us, not what I feel like or what I think or what other people are telling me. This is what the Lord is declaring. See, far too many of us, our relationship with Jesus, our maybe even our perspective of Christianity has become a list of do's and don'ts. If I do this, I'm good. If I don't do this, I'm not good, and God's mad at me and all this. It's not Christianity. It's not even a relationship, really. When we look at Psalm 23, it oozes of close, intimate relationship, like a sheep with his shepherd, or like a son or daughter with their daddy. In fact, when we read Psalm 23, a new list starts to appear, not one of do's and don'ts, but rather one more appropriate for describing a relationship. It's a list of realities, guys. We deal in truth. This is what's real. And when the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. I don't need anything. I don't want anything. I do want stuff, but I don't really need it, right? I have peace. My soul is refreshed when the Lord is my shepherd. When the Lord is my shepherd, I have guidance, and he's going to lead me down all the right paths. So I don't have to worry about it. I don't even have to worry where I'm headed because I know it's good and it's best for me because the Lord is leading the way. There are no fear of circumstances or situations. I don't fear any evil. I don't fear what's in my future. I don't fear death. I don't fear sin. I don't feel evil that's around the world or wherever those terrorists. I don't fear any of that. Why? Because the Lord is my shepherd. I'll fear no evil because he's with me. I have the comfort and protection of his presence and his rod and staff at all times, especially in the most difficult ones. When the Lord's my shepherd, I have healing. I realize that I've been provided for with more than I could possibly need, and so I don't complain. I don't worry. I'm not concerned. I just push forward and say, man, the Lord's my shepherd. I lack nothing. Let's run. When the Lord's my shepherd, I have the promise and the reality that God's goodness and his mercy and his love every moment of every day are chasing after me. And with the Lord as my shepherd, I can live confidently and assured in this life because I have a home with him forever. Isn't that good? I know it's 12:30. Is that good? Or am I just like, all right. I'm like, oh yeah, can you wrap it up? I'm hungry. It's important because it's really great news. This should be our declaration of every day. The Lord's my shepherd. Let's roll. Like what's on the menu for today? But I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't share. This is all great news, but there's some bad news in here too. And it's only temporarily bad news, really. The bad news is if the Lord is not your shepherd, none of this is true for you. Like, thanks for coming. If the Lord's not your shepherd, you can't claim any of this as true. The good news of that bad news is the fact that it's real easy to fix because the Lord is always looking to add sheep to his fold. See, there's only two people that are here this morning. You're either here and the Lord is your shepherd, and you're here because the Lord needs you to influence some people around you because they're lost sheep and they need to come in. Or you're here and the Lord's not your shepherd, and we can deal with that today too. Because here's the thing, as much as I want it and we want it, the Lord wants you to be dwelling with him in his house forever. And so in just a moment, we're going to stand up, and I want to recite this and declare this because this is, if it's true of you, I want us to stand up and declare this. And if it's not, I know Rachel's got a laundry list of announcements to close out with today, but don't leave here without talking to me about, hey, I need to be a sheep. Sheep don't get like real wet in the rain either, so it's an added bonus, just saying. But man, don't just, hey boy, that's cool, that's nice, that's fun, and just leave it there. This can be you. And so would you stand, if the Lord is your shepherd, would you stand up with me and let's declare this together like David did when he first wrote it? We're just going to read it out loud together. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen?